Okay, so now we're talking about the works of James Strang, and this should be a pretty interesting one because his works are pretty miraculous. All right, so let's talk about the fact first, really quickly. I didn't reveal this in the last video, but he had only known Joseph Smith for a few months, I think. I believe just a few months before everything took place, and he ended up being shot in Carthage jail, right? So he only known Joseph Smith for a few months. And so this is the main reason why probably many others wouldn't listen also and follow him. Or, acknowledge the priesthood succession. So what's interesting to note here is that his first work is that he finds plates. And these are called the plates of Vori, the Vori plates. And actually, if you go on, Google, you can Wikipedia these plates, and it shows basically a facsimile of what the plates look like, and the letters of them, and what they say, and things of that nature. Now, what's really cool is that he had a dream about where these plates were. So instead of going out there by himself and digging these plates up, what does he do? He says, nope, I'm going to get all kinds of guys to go with me, and they're going to inspect everything before we begin digging. So that's exactly what happens. He goes out there with some guys, and they inspect the ground, and they basically write down and affirm that nobody had touched the ground, that the ground had not been messed with. You could tell it had been completely and totally undisturbed. And it was right next to a tree. And he said, basically in the dream, he's seen it, so many feet down and under a branch of the tree. And so they began digging, and they could tell that the earth had not been, corrupted in any way. So they get all the way down, and there it is. There are the plates, the Vori plates. And of course, it's in a different type of language. And he interprets it. He writes out what the meanings are. And of course, there's an extended version of the meaning as well. But anyhow, it really doesn't have much meaning. But what it did for him was it solidified his prophethood. It solidified the truth. And so, all of these people, they attested to what they found and what they seen. And this was kind of a miracle and for everybody's faith at that point in time in order to continue following James Strang. Now, what's really interesting to note is the person who invented the typewriter actually came and seen these plates too. And if we're being perfectly honest, thousands of people laid their eyes on these plates. They were basically not forbidding anyone to come and look at them. So they did. Everybody came from far and wide to see these plates. Not just a few people like in Joseph Smith's case, but thousands. So what happened to these plates? Well, nobody knows. They just came up missing at some point in time, and nobody knows wherein in history they came up missing and why. So that's a really weird story, and I wish I could elaborate on that and give you more information, but that's just the story. And if you'd like to Google more on it, you can. I don't know what more you'll find, but that's just my understanding of it. So then the next thing that James Strang is known for is the Book of the Law of the Lord. Now this is a longer work, and he used the Urim and Thummim to do this work. And of course, I believe these were plates of brass that he found. Now, I don't know where those are. I don't know whatever happened to them, but I don't think those are around either. But he translated from the plates of brass the Book of the Law of the Lord, which is held in the books of Moses, from Exodus on down to Deuteronomy. And they're the laws, the original Old Testament laws, but uncorrupted and undefiled, which has a lot more information in them than the original did that we see in the books of Moses, or as you would call it, the Old Testament, or Torah. or Tanakh, whatever you want to say. It doesn't matter. But we go back and we can see that it has a lot more information. We can see that it kind of throws value to the things that Jesus told his disciples. It has a lot of the stuff that Jesus said in his verbal laws that he was giving to his disciples. So what happened? Where did he go wrong? So he moved out to this they moved out to this island over there called Beaver Island, and he became the king. And in the Revelations it said that God was naming him king of his people, and he placed the laws on them and told them everything that they were going to do, and so on and so forth. And like man always seems to do, after God has given them an abundance of spiritual wealth, they squander it and they begin to do what they want to do. Now, in the beginning, he spoke up against plural marriages. And then all of a sudden, towards the end of his life, he became for plural marriage. Many of his people were like, no, we ain't going to play this game because it causes confusion and it causes a lot of issues. We're not doing it. So they left when he started getting into plural marriage. And many other people started to leave as well, aside from, his the big time, leaders in the church. A lot of the regular members began to leave too. And the reason why was because they were all hurt over this plural marriage thing in Nauvoo, and all it ever did was cause confusion. So what happens? James Strang starts also teaching a few other doctrines that were pretty well unbelievable to be teaching after all the revelations he had. One of them was that the birth was not, a virgin birth. That the baby Jesus came from Joseph and Mary, and that in fact it was not the Immaculate Conception that everybody thought. He was a natural child, and he was adopted by God. The second important one here is that God could not do all things. That in fact some things are as impossible for God as they are for us. What? And I'm trying to think about the third one, but I know one of them was just the plural marriages thing. And so, what happened to him? Well, here, ready? This is one of the things that for me sums up and personally makes me realize and know that him and Joseph Smith were both prophets. The same exact thing happened to him that happened to Joseph Smith. He was shot in the head, right? So that happened to Joseph Smith too. He was shot in the face at a very young age in 1855. And he actually survived for 3 weeks. He actually survived past the 12-year anniversary of Joseph Smith's death. Now, if these things don't say something to you about the truth, I don't know what will. But it's just unbelievable how close their interactions of death were. Now, what's even weirder is the fact that, he survived past the anniversary of Joseph Smith's death. And just so you guys know, he didn't pass on the priesthood. He just basically said that Joseph Smith's son, according to the Doctrines and Covenants, should get the priesthood, and it should be bestowed upon him, and that he wasn't going to bestow it upon anybody else, but he always thought that Joseph Smith's son, which was Joseph Smith III, should be named as the priesthood. And that's where that comes in as the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, another break-off. So that's really it with James Strang. Started off good, like Joseph Smith, went downhill, and God had to snap his life from him, just like he always does if you want to mess around and play games. So that's it. James Strang.